Mentioned the jobless rate rose more than expected last month. Could this convince the RBA to keep our interest rates on hold? Leith Van Onselen is Chief Economist at macrobusiness.com.au. Hi, Leith.
G'day, Kelly. Can you hear me this time?
I can. Now, how much did... Yeah, I know. It's a miracle. How much did unemployment go up?
Yeah, so the unemployment rate rose by 0.2% to 4.1% in April, and the underemployment rate also edged up by 0.1%. Now, the unemployment rate now at 4.1% is now getting perilously close to the Reserve Bank of Australia's end-of-year unemployment forecast of 4.3%. And the thing that drove this this rise in unemployment was labour supply. So employers aren't shedding jobs; they're not cutting people off. We don't have people being made redundant. What is effectively driving up the unemployment rate is this record immigration that we're having. So effectively, Australia's labour supply is growing faster than we can create jobs, and that's what's pushing up the unemployment rate. And just to put some numbers around that, Australia needs to create about 40,000 jobs a month just to keep the unemployment rate stable, assuming a stable participation rate. And with these obviously high interest rates that we've got and the per capita recession that we're in, we just can't create enough jobs to basically soak up all these extra workers that are coming mostly from overseas. And that's effectively what's behind this rise in the unemployment rate.
So with these figures, this 4.1, is that a bit of a surprise this early in the year?
Yeah, it is actually. So economists would tip in a 3.9% unemployment rate. So it is actually worse than what was expected. And what it effectively tells you is that the Reserve Bank of Australia is far less likely to raise rates on the back of these figures. And it does follow. So the listeners might remember a month ago we got those bad inflation numbers. The CPI inflation was higher than they expected. Everyone was talking about rate hikes. Since then, we've had a whole bunch of data come out, domestic data, which has come in a lot weaker than expected. So in addition to this labour market data today, we've also had yesterday's wage price index, which was a lot weaker than economists and the RBA had forecast. We also had last week's retail sales data, which was the weakest annual retail sales outside of the pandemic since 2000. And it actually showed that per capita, once we adjust population growth, in real terms, retail sales have fallen by about 6% since mid-2022. And then, of course, we had the NAB business surveys. That's a survey that's released by NAB every month. It's sort of like the leading business survey. And that was released, and that basically showed that we've got across-the-board weakness across the economy. So slower economic growth, slower employment growth, labour costs are falling, which is a good thing, and also lower inflation that businesses are reporting. So all this data points out that we've got a very weak domestic economy. Inflation pressures are easing. We've got obviously rising unemployment, which is going to continue. And that tells you that there is very little chance now the Reserve Bank hiking rates again. And that's good news. And I think the next move in interest rates is going to be down either late this year or early next year.
It's interesting because in the US, for example, they're talking about not getting those interest rate drops, aren't they? That their economy is still doing very well.
Yeah, and it is a very different economy. So the US is actually strong on the surface, but although that is driven a lot by the tech sector. So there's a lot of the regular folks aren't doing so well, but also we have a very different system. So Australia is one of the most sensitive nations in the world to interest rate rises. So the reason for that is because 85% of our mortgages are variable rate mortgages, and the rest of our mortgages are fixed rate mortgages. Short-term fixed rate. So they turn over, within 3 years. And what that's meant is that the Reserve Bank's rate hikes have been passed on to Australia far quicker than just about any other country. And the US is at the other end of that spectrum, whereby 80+% of their mortgages are long-term fixed, so fixed for about 25 years. So what that's meant is that, despite the fact that the Federal Reserve in the US has hiked rates by more than the Reserve Bank here, we've actually had a much bigger pass-through to mortgage holders. So Australia is actually running one of the most restrictive monetary policies in the world because we have that faster pass-through of rate hikes into our variable mortgages.
Leith Van Onselen's Chief Economist at macrobusiness.com.au. You're on 612 ABC Brisbane with Kelly Higgins-Devine. And we're just talking about the jobless figures that have come in today and what that might mean for interest rates coming in until the end of the year. So with this, Leith, you were talking about the fact that immigration and skilled workers coming in, it has helped that that unemployment rate. So is that actually a spur for the government to keep them coming in? Because if they don't, the unemployment rate drops down again, and once more we have pressure on rates.
Well, not really, because unfortunately it's a double-sided coin. So
Yeah.
on the one level, the high immigration we've got lowers wage growth, and it also obviously pushes up unemployment, other things equal. The problem with it is it's actually net inflationary, because it also forces up housing inflation. So you've been in Brisbane, will be well aware of the rental crisis that's going on right
Yep.
now. And obviously, you've got tent cities and those sorts of things forming. Australia's rental inflation has gone through the roof. And the principal reason for that is because obviously we've got this mass population growth and we're not building enough homes. And that is that is actually one of the reasons why Australia's inflation has been stubbornly high. And Treasurer Jim Chalmers, the federal budget tipped that Australia's CPI inflation would fall to about 2.6% by late next year. And one of the reasons why he tipped that, which is actually lower than what the Reserve Bank's projecting, is because the federal government plans to lower immigration quicker. And he actually said that the sharper cuts in immigration should bring down inflation. And that just tells you that immigration is actually a driver of inflation net.
Yep. All right. Well, would you expect then to, if these numbers keep going the way they're going, to see an interest rate drop towards the end of this year?
Yeah, I'm still tipping in the second half. So I honestly believe that the economy is weakening faster than most people think.
Yeah.
And because of that, the Reserve Bank's going to be forced to cut, probably late this year. But at worst, I think early next year. But I guess the bottom line is I think there's very little prospect that the Reserve Bank's going to hike rates from here.
Yeah. Well, I suppose for a lot of people that's good news. Leith, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Leith Van Onselen, who's Chief Economist at macrobusiness.com.au.